Hello there! Welcome back everyone to another episode of Void Dwarf Studios. And today we're looking at the high-flying dwarves once again, Kharadon Overlords. And this episode is going to be dedicated to the Endrinriggers and the Sky Wardens. Skyriggers is their colloquial nickname. This is because they are defined by the bulbous back-mounted ether endrins that are mounted on their shoulders that allow them to, achieve flight. A bit like a dirigible, except this thing says screw you to all the laws of physics. They can take flight alongside their Kharadon sky fleets and hitch themselves to vessels with magna boots or sky hooks, hence how they got the nickname of Skyriggers. When battle is joined, these Skyrigger teams will detach from their ships and serve as rapid response units. Essentially, they will blunt an incoming attack, or they will divert it to the best of their ability. And Endrinriggers and Sky Wardens serve very different functions, and I will be going over them in this video as well as the general rules for them and how you employ them in your armies. So, the Endrinriggers. Primarily, they are charged with the maintenance of a Sky Fleet's vessels. Junior members of the Engineers Guild report directly to the fleet's admirals and Endrin Master, a character who I will look in on a later video. If you are a budding junior Endrinrigger, the only way to advance up the guild's upper echelons is through feats of competence and daring whilst in the line of duty. So just sitting in a dockyard repairing ships is not going to get you any renown, nor is it going to help your career prospects. An Endrinrigger will dart through intense dangers to reach stricken vessels and perform vital and complex field repairs whilst the carnage of battle rages on. And much like most maintenance-based tools, they are surprisingly deadly when you decide to point them at something that's trying to hurt you. For example, their main tool is known as a rivet gun. This thing is essentially designed to buckle back armor plating and hold it together in one piece, and it works by firing a red-hot rivet into a hole and essentially using it to clamp it back to the ship. Although the irony is, this red-hot rivet is also perfectly good at piercing through flesh and armor. A rivet with this much power that can punch its way through the armor of an airship is more than capable of rendering someone's skull into bloody mush. And when the enemy gets too close, they can use their Etherematic saws, which really are meant for repairing vessels and just removing bits of debris from the skyship. They make surprisingly good weapons of murder in close combat, easily capable of disemboweling and removing heads, limbs and, anything really, as they would be from cutting through metal. Some Endrinriggers do carry more sensible weapons. These include grapnel launchers, which they can use to drag enemies out of cover so that they get closer for their ether saws and rivet guns, or they can have a much more functional Etherematic Volley Gun, essentially a mini chain gun that this guy flies around with and peppers the enemy with ether shot bullets. The final option is known as a drill launcher. This wonderful little thing is fantastic at killing monsters, machines, and any creature with a high number of wounds, because it fires and, drills its way deeper and deeper into the poor unfortunate target, making it a highly unpleasant way to die. But of course, these fellas' primary objective is to make sure they repair the vessels rather than hang around for too long. They are a rapid response unit. They are by no means your gun line. The alternative to the Endrinrigger, if you're not so interested in the repairs, are known as the Sky Wardens. Sky Wardens function more as an airborne shock troop force rather than the dedicated combat mechanics that the Endrinriggers are. Their job is to disrupt and strike at valuable targets whilst employing their superior firepower and mobility to get out of the way of any incoming retribution. As an additional deterrent, Sky Wardens have these wonderful little sky mines. They are set to timed charges, which means they can allow them to float above them if something's trying to get the drop on them and detonate them remotely. And anyone who attempts to pursue them is going to have to navigate through this minefield. As these Kharadons aren't particularly concerned with ship repairs, they tend to carry a different variety of weapons. They could be arguably called airborne cavalry because they use their vulcanizer pistols at short range for deadly superheated shots of etherematic plasma, which can reduce even the heaviest of armor to molten slag, as well as being armed with a sky pike. Each sky pike is twice the height of a dwarf And when propelled at high speed, thanks to the ether-powered engines on their backs, these things can really mess up even an ogre's day. Skypikes are specifically designed for killing things with high wounds, and really making it unpleasant for anyone who thinks that this flying dwarf is going to be an easy target. And very much like the Endrinriggers, they do have the option to upgrade their weapons. They can take the grapnel launcher, which allows them to drag enemies closer, making it easier for you to leap down upon them and stab them up good with your spears, as well as having the drill gun and the volley cannon. Now, I'm going to discuss the rules for both units kind of in one go, because a lot of their stats are actually, well, identical. The differences, of course, comes in their special rules and one or two weapons. Both Endrinriggers and Skywardens have the following stat line: 2 wound models apiece, which is always handy, 7 bravery, a 4-up save, and 12-inch movement, which is fantastic. You can dart around the battlefield very quickly, and also get further away very quickly if you so chose. The Etherematic Volley Gun that both units can take has a lovely 24-inch range with 6 shots hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s, -1 rend and 1 damage. This is pretty handy if you're shooting at horde units, but if you start finding stuff with higher toughness, I would suggest you go with something like a drill launcher, which has the same range, but this thing, instead of doing 1 damage, does D3, as well as having the lovely -3 rend, which means that most armour it's going to go through without too much trouble. And of course, they both have the option to take a grapnel launcher or skyhook. The skyhook is a 24-inch range, a single shot that hits on a 4, wounds on a 3, with -2 rend and a flat 3 damage, which is fantastic, although the lack of shots kind of reduces its usefulness as a frontline gun. But that's not the reason you take this thing. You take this thing because when you are armed with a skyhook, you add 1 to your charge rolls for this unit if any models are armed with said skyhook. And in addition to this, enemy units cannot retreat if they are within 3 inches of this model whilst armed with it. This is essentially your way of making damn sure that you will get into combat and you can murder the bejesus out of whatever unit you've decided doesn't deserve to live. The drill launcher, as previously mentioned, is fantastic against monsters because of the additional fact that if you hit with an unmodified attack roll of 6, you do a flat 3 mortal wounds instead of normal ones, making it much harder to save and also meaning it's more likely that you're going to kill your opponent. You can have both units in up to groups of 12 models, which is quite the flying Skyforce, and this means that you have more than enough bodies to make your way through most combats. And of course, both of these units fly, which means that they are not interested in what terrain is in the way, and they can move very, very quickly. And both of them have the Hitcher special rule. What this effectively does is, so long as this unit's within 6 inches of a Kharadon vessel, it can choose to follow it when it does the high fly ability. However, this does limit your unit to no more than 7 models that can hitch to a sky vessel. But the fact remains that this means that when your sky vessel flies up into the sky and drags your Endrinriggers or Skywardens along for the ride, this means you have a close combat unit that's immediately there to protect your ship. A very handy, useful trick, and it doesn't affect your transport capacity for your vessel, meaning you could still have a group of Archanaut company on board with, say, a couple characters, and you'll still be able to do the fly high route, which is all kinds of hilariousness, let's be honest here. But here is where things start to diverge. As mentioned, the Endrinriggers are primarily there for combat repairs, and they have slightly different primary weapons as opposed to the Skywardens. For example, the Rapid Fire Rivet Gun is a 12-inch weapon with 3 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, -1 rend and 1 damage. A nice little rapid anti-infantry peppering, which, isn't going to kill a lot, but it will do something. The funny as hell bit is when you get into close combat. Their Etherematic Saws are a single attack, but they hit on 3s and wound on 2s with a -2 rend and D3 damage. And your Mizzen Master, of course, has the extra attack, meaning he has 2 attacks. Now, I would not want to pit this thing against a unit of close combat specialised creatures. However, that D3 damage and wounding on a 2 is going to mess someone up royally, especially as it hits on a relatively sensible number. And of course, they are Endrinriggers, which means they have the special rule Endrin Craft. At the start of your hero phase, you can pick a friendly sky vessel within 1 inch of your Endrinriggers. You roll a dice for each model in this unit, representing that the riggers are all scrambling over the vessel to repair it, and for every 4+ you heal a wound. Think about that for a minute. You can have a unit of 12 of these, and if you get them all within 1 inch of your vessel, something that is very possible to do, you could send a skyship that's about to crash, with say only a couple wounds left, to potentially maximum hit points. That's all kinds of ridiculousness. And it's why these Endrinriggers are fantastic at making sure your sky fleets carry on the fight. The Sky Wardens are your more close combat based Kharadon Overlords. The Vulcanizer pistol has an even shorter range compared to the Rivet Gun. However, its 2 shots hitting and wounding on 3s, with a -1 rend and 1 damage, does mean you're more likely to actually get some wounds in. And the Sky Pike, which has 2 attacks that hit on 4s and wound on 3s, -1 rend D3 damage, whilst not necessarily as easy to hit as the Etherematic Saws, you've got more attacks, which is always more useful. And don't forget, your Sky Wardens are armed with Sky Mines. These wonderful little contraptions give you the following extra abilities. If an enemy unit that can fly ends a charge within 1 inch of you, you get to roll a dice for each model in the enemy unit, and on a 6 they take a mortal wound. Now obviously it's a 6, it's a 1 in 6 chance, but that's potentially going to be all kinds of fun. And in addition to this timed charge, meaning that your mines are set on a timed charger, allows you to roll a dice for each enemy unit that is within 3 inch, immediately before this unit makes a retreat move. On a 4+, that unit takes D3 mortal wounds. So yeah, when you decide to back out or for whatever reason feel the fight's not going your way, you can retreat and then cause D3 wounds to the unit. Mortal wounds to be precise, which are always more funny. And because of this, Sky Wardens have a very different role. Your job is to find large, multi-wound targets, fly in, hit them with your Sky Pikes, and then back out and cause mortal wounds. Fly back in, and do more stabbing. And don't forget, you still have the Hitcher ability, meaning you can latch yourself to an airship, fly high, and then disappear going na 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 na. These are potentially very frustrating units, and really it's kind of a coin toss as to which one's more useful. Personally, I have a soft spot for the Endrinriggers because that ability to repair skyships is potentially amazing and a real clutch when you're in a bind, but because of their lack of attacks in close combat, it does mean that you need to be a little bit more careful about what fights you pick. Whereas the Sky Wardens, whilst being a great skirmishy type cavalry, I wouldn't call them shock cavalry purely because of the fact that whilst they have 2 attacks each, with their Custodian having an additional one for 3, you're still a little bit vulnerable. So I would only charge into units that you have a pretty good chance of actually murdering. And that's just the thing, you have to be careful with these flying units. They can move around the battlefield fast, and really you should use them to take advantage of your opponent's weaknesses. Any units that are easy targets should really be hit at with these individuals. But in any case, these wonderful flying dwarves are always going to find a useful home in your Kharadon army. I've had lots of fun with them, and they tend to kick out more wounds than they actually take. I hope you've all enjoyed this video. Do you have a particular favourite? Endrinrigger or Sky Wardens? Which ones do you prefer using? Leave a little comment down below, like and subscribe, it really helps me out, and feel free to check out the Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous. I just wanted to thank you all so much for following this channel, I really appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Until then, take care everyone,